The ancient Greek historian Herodotus tells an interesting story of something that took place about 490 BC. It seems that Darius, who was the great king of Persia at that time, wanted to extend his empire. He sent emissaries to each of the Greek city-states. And those emissaries, when pounding on the gates of the city, demanded of the city leaders tributes in earth and water. It was Darius' way of saying, hey, everything you have and everything you are belongs to me. The soil you till, the ground you build your homes on, the water you drink, it's all mine, and you need to recognise this. Well, the people in Athens were needlessly unimpressed about this whole thing, and so what they did was they took the emissaries outside and threw them in a mud puddle. You want earth? You want water? There it is. Take that back to your master. Well, Darius was incensed, so he mobilised his armies, gathered them together, they sailed across the sea, and they landed on the coast of Greece about 40 kilometres from Athens. And Athens suddenly realised that they may have overstepped the mark. They realised they needed help. And who better to help a city in ancient Greece than the mighty Spartans? They needed to get a message, and so they chose a runner, a young man by the name of Phidippides. Said, Phidippides, we just want you to run across there to Athens and to Sparta and ask them if they will come and help us. And so that's what Phidippides did. Now, what you may not realise is that it's not just a hop, skip and a jump between Athens and Sparta. It's about 240 kilometres. And so Phidippides laid off his armour, put aside his heavy spear, and he began to run. And it took him a day and a night to get from Athens to Sparta. And when he went into the Spartans and said, come, you need to help us, we need to fight against Darius the first of Persia, the Spartans had issues of their own at the time. They said, sorry, we're not going to help you. No hope, no help coming from us. So Phidippides, this guy who has just run 240 kilometres, has to turn around and run back another 240 kilometres all the way back to Athens, which he did. Now, I can't imagine what this would be like. You imagine being out there on those lonely, rocky Greek hillsides, alone, mile after mile after mile, kilometre after kilometre after kilometre. You would have to start scratching your head going, why am I actually doing this? You know, what is this about? Most of the people in his city, I mean, there were people he knew and loved, but the majority of the citizens of Athens he wouldn't have even known. But he went out there and he did it anyway. And when he came to the city and told the city fathers, listen, these Spartans, these great warriors that they are, they're not going to help us. Well, the Athenians realised there was nothing they could do but mobilise their own armies, head down to the coast and fight Darius. And so they said, well, Phidippides, you better rejoin your military unit. There's your breastplate, there's your spear. So Phidippides puts his heavy bronze armour back on, and after having already done 480 kilometres, he does another 42 kilometres down to the coast. This has taken about 3.5 days by now. And so the Athenians come up into battle against the Persians, and amazingly, they drive Darius back into the ocean. But the people in the city of Athens don't know the battle has been won. And so they're looking around for a runner. Who can we send back to Athens to give the people the good news? And they go, we know, let's choose Phidippides. This poor guy who has run 240 kilometres one way from Athens to Sparta and another 240 kilometres back the other way from Sparta to Athens, and then has marched 42 kilometres to the plain of Marathon where the battle took place, and fought that battle all day, is now expected to run another 42 kilometres back to the city. He doesn't deny it, he doesn't refuse, he lays off his armour and he runs back to the city of Athens again. And he does it because he wants to bring the good news of the victory in this great battle to his people. And he does it, and he comes bursting in through the gates of the city, almost exhausted. He drags himself through to where the city fathers are waiting, and everyone is breathless, wondering what the news is. Why is this one bloodied and bruised and dusty warrior come running back to the city when no one else can be seen? And he comes in, and he falls on the steps, and with his last gasp breathes out, "Rejoice, we win," and dies. I mean, seriously, he dies at that point. He gave up his life to bring the good news to the people that he loved. But as I said before, What was he thinking when he was alone during that journey? You know, the Christian walk, in fact, life's journey in general, is not always a joyful thing. It's hard. And oftentimes we find ourselves carrying the responsibility all alone, wondering why on earth we are doing this. What's in it for me? No one sees, no one's watching. Here I am running this race, and who even cares? Just to bring good news to people that I may not even know. You know, the scriptures have something to say about this. Jesus himself, speaking in Matthew chapter 6, verses 3 and 4, this is what Jesus says. When you give to someone in need, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Give your gifts in private, for your Father who sees everything will reward you. You hear what that says? Oftentimes there's not some great big audience. When we're doing something of significance, oftentimes nobody will ever know, nobody will ever see. But it's still important to do it. It's still the right thing to do. Those hard yards that we run, no one else might notice, but God sees all. And he rejoices. When we're out on that lonely road, trying to bring good news of salvation to people that we may not even know and people who may not even appreciate it, there is someone watching, and that is the Lord of hosts. Jesus said something else in Matthew 25. You know, Matthew 25 is an interesting passage. It's that great sheep and goats judgment scene. You know, I will separate the sheep and the goats and they will all pass under the shepherd's rod. Jesus describes this scene, sorting out of people who are truly his followers and those who aren't. And all are asked the question, what did you do for the least of these, my brothers? Did you go and care for the poor? Did you care for the widows, the orphans, the strangers within your gates? Did you visit the person in prison? Did you give food and meals to the homeless? What did you do? And that becomes the criterion of the judgment. That is the thing that Jesus is looking for at that time. And then he says this thing, he says, in as much as you did it for the least of these, you did it for me. No one might have ever seen, no one might have ever cared, but these things that we do when we're all alone, no one watching, are important to God. You know, there was another runner, his name was Gary Bjorklund, a great American athlete. And he was doing the pre-trials for I think it was the 76 Olympics. And the tryout was taking place at a big sporting field in Eugene, Oregon. Now his race was the 10,000 metres. That's a 10-kilometre race. Not near as far as Pheidippides ran, but still a significant distance. And he started out with the other athletes to get one of those precious places. Only those first three places would receive a place on the Olympic team for that event. Well, they took off. He was doing really fine, running up with the first four in the pack, and he was 14 laps in when they got into a huddle going around one of the curves, and one of the other runners just made contact with one of his shoes and pulled the heel of his shoe down off his foot. Now, for a while as he's running along, it broke his rhythm. He thought, well, what do I do? Do I keep running or do I ditch it? And he thought the easiest thing to do is just to shake my shoe off. And that's what he did. He shook his shoe off, but then his whole rhythm was gone because he had a running spike on one foot and a bare foot with the other. And it was really difficult and it was quite painful. And he thought, I haven't got a hope of finishing this race. He thought he was alone out there. And as he comes around close to the grandstand, ready to pack it in and give away this tryout for the Olympics, there was a guy in the grandstand. And this one man stood up and yelled and screamed and said, "Don't stop, you can do it." Well, Gary Bjorklund heard him and he kept running. And he thought, okay, there's somebody out there who this is important to, as well as just me. I'm not actually alone. He completed that lap. And when he came around for the next lap, there's about 10 people up there. And they're all cheering, "Come on, Gary, you can do it." Each successive lap when he came around past that grandstand, there were more and more and more people cheering him on until by the time it came toward the end of the race and he had managed to scrape past the fourth runner so that he was in third place, literally thousands of spectators were on their feet cheering. Come on, you can do it, you can finish, you can get there. Despite the obstacles, despite the difficulties, he realised that even when he thought he was alone, he wasn't. And he finished that race third and qualified for the Olympics. You know, it's an incredible story. And it's a story that really warms my heart because it makes me realise that whatever happens in life, even if I feel like I'm all alone, when I'm trying to do the thing that God has asked me to do, it makes me realise that there are eyes watching what I do. Beings in this universe who consider my actions important. Paul puts it like this. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 9, he actually says, he describes himself and the other apostles as like performers in an arena, as though the entire universe is watching what we do. We are never alone. When we feel like we're all alone out on that rocky hillside, trying to take the good news to the people who might not even care about it, God is watching. Heaven is watching. And it warms his heart and it warms the heart of that watching heavenly universe. You don't ever have to feel like you're alone. You don't ever have to feel like what you do goes unnoticed. Your actions are important. They're important to God. They're important to the people who you're trying to take the good news to. And even if the struggle seems too much at times, please draw strength from the fact that what we do makes a difference.